So this is a crazy story. Does the DEA need to know? What? Wait.
What?
We need to get that sound bit on camera too.
Was it a high C you hit?
I did.
All
right, so this was from Mario Trujillo.
It doesn't even, you just peek the button. You just
yes, I
do. Just peek the thing.
Nobody hears it because it peaks. Yeah, but you set that sensitivity thing, so it doesn't hear me when I peek. Anyway,
I know. Yeah.
Your messaging service should not be a DEA informant. Everybody that uses DMs on Twitter, that uses messaging on YouTube, uses Facebook Messenger or Instagram, I have no idea why you would, but even Reddit and Snapchat, here's what's going on. Now, I found this originally article in ScheerPost. Go to ScheerPost.com. Outstanding website, Indie Media Award honoree. And they link to the Electronic Frontier Foundation, which does great work. I believe they're also a nonprofit, but they also, I think, are hooked up to one of these NGOs, and they can be a little narrative managey. This one was pretty interesting. A new U.S. Senate bill would require private messaging services, social media companies, and even cloud providers to report their users to the DEA if they find out about certain illegal drug sales. This would lead to inaccurate reports and turn messaging services into government informants. Yay! The bill, which is named the Cooper-Davis Act, is likely to result in a host of inaccurate reports and in companies sweeping up innocent conversations, including discussions about past drug use or treatment. While explicitly not required, it may also give internet companies incentive to conduct dragnet searches of private messages to find protected speech that is merely indicative of illegal behavior. Not even actually admitting it, but just indicative. Most troubling, however, is that this bill is a template for legislators to try to force internet companies to report their users to law enforcement for other unfavorable conduct or speech, like anti-U.S. military propaganda, for example. This bill aims to cut down on the illegal sales of fentanyl, methamphetamine, and counterfeit narcotics. Understood. But what would prevent the next bill from targeting marijuana or the sale and purchase of abortion pills, or if a new administration deemed those drugs unsafe or illegal for purely political reasons, like the Republicans would likely do in 2024. As we've argued many times before, once the framework exists, it could easily be expanded. This is what broke me, is that the bill requires reporting to the DEA. The law targets the unlawful sale or distribution of fentanyl, meth, and the unlawful sale, distribution, or manufacture of a counterfeit controlled substance. Well, under the law, providers are required to report to the DEA when they gain actual knowledge of facts about these drug sales, or when a user makes a reasonably believable report about those sales. Providers are also allowed to make reports when they have a reasonable belief about those facts or have actual knowledge that a sale is planned or imminent. Okay? The last one I can understand.
Because I was tired of paying for weed.
Well, sure. Importantly, providers can be fined hundreds of thousands of dollars for a failure to report. They have discretion on what to include in a report, but they're encouraged to turn over personal information about the users involved, location information, and complete communications. The DEA can then share the reports with other law enforcement. That doesn't set up for a Gestapo or anything. The law also
it's it's a 1984. It's straight up. You couldn't, it's Big Brother.
The law also makes a request. It's amazing that providers preserve the report and other relevant information so law enforcement can potentially obtain it later. For how long? And it prevents providers from telling their users about the preservation unless they first notify the DEA. So wait a minute. They have to store this stuff, and then they can't tell the person they're storing it about unless they first tell the DEA we're doing that. You think DEA is going to like that? I doubt it. We've seen this reporting scheme before. It's modeled off of existing law that requires similar reporting about child sexual abuse material. Lawmakers also previously tried and failed to use this reporting scheme to target vaguely defined terror content. This bill would port over some of those same flaws. So under the existing law, providers are required to report actual knowledge of CSAM to a group called the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. I know we covered this last year, which is a quasi-governmental entity that later forwards on some reports to law enforcement. Companies based...
And for those at home just joining us, what's this bill?
This
Which
is
bill?
the... Cooper, what's the name? Cooper
Yeah, we
Davis
got to go
Act.
back.
Cooper Davis Act.
Okay. Okay.
Under existing law, like I said, they're required to report to this quasi-governmental agency that later forwards on some reports to law enforcement, but not all of them. Companies base...
It's
some
the
of them.
Diet Coke of government.
It is. It's
the margarine of...
It's the light beer of
government.
Companies base some of their reporting on matches found by comparing digital signatures of images to an existing database of previously removed CSAM. So if it shows back up and it matches the signature, well, they think they know where it came from. Notably, this bill requires reporting directly to the DEA, and the content at issues, drug sales, is markedly harder and more subjective to identify. While actual CSAM is unprotected by the First Amendment, mere discussion of drug use is protected speech. Due to the liability that they would face for failing to report, some companies may over-report using content scanning tools that we know may have larger error rates in other contexts. Like literally, Reef saying, I was tired of paying for weed, they could then hit us for stealing marijuana somewhere. Theoretically.
Right.
Or at least get us investigated. Yep. Despite strong challenges, the existing CSAM reporting law has so far survived Fourth Amendment scrutiny because the government does not explicitly compel providers to search through their users' communications. It only requires reporting if providers decide to search on their own. However, some applications of existing law have violated the Constitution, specifically when providers make a report without fully examining the material they're reporting. In those cases, law enforcement has been deemed to have exceeded the scope of the private search by providers, which should require a warrant. Of course, they don't get one. Like with this bill, a separate piece of the existing CSAM law requires providers to preserve user content after making a report, but there's an increasing recognition that this compelled preservation constitutes a Fourth Amendment seizure that removes a user's rights to delete their own content.
The Fourth Amendment, not even the First, which it is, but the Fourth. We're going down to illegal search and seizure.
Hey, we got a person over on Rumble. Yay, Amos. Woo-hoo.
With the amount of people that would have to actively look at all your messages to do this, you might as well have it illegal room and board too, right? Which amendment's that?
No, they're just going to feed it into ChatGPT. They're literally going to feed your transcripts into ChatGPT and say, look for these words, and they'll find it in 3 seconds, and you'll be done. Toast.
That's fucked.
Yep. We should strengthen the privacy of user communications, not weaken them. Totally agree. After years of attempts to weaken privacy, lawmakers should focus their interest on strengthening protections for user content. But we know that they're not. They have no interest in doing this. They want to further monitor and nanny state everybody. And that's what I was going to say. This is the nanny state in overdrive right here. Under the 1986 Electronic Communications Privacy Act, providers are generally restricted from handing over user information to law enforcement without some kind of legal process, whether it be a warrant, a court order, or a subpoena. However, this bill creates another carve-out. Now, we know that that's already been happening anyway because of NGOs like Hamilton 68 working with Twitter and the FBI and the CIA, other government agencies, quote, OGA. Rather than carving up ECPA, we need to update and strengthen the decades-old protections. EFF has been making an argument for more than a decade. Right. And states like California have charted a path forward and will hopefully continue. But of course, we know they're going to be bought off and water it down and weaken it to the point where it has no teeth and it doesn't matter anyway, and they'll be able to do whatever the hell they want. More immediately, if lawmakers do not abandon the Cooper-Davis Act, the worst aspects must be avoided. So, when considering amendments, lawmakers should make the reporting scheme entirely voluntary, which they won't. Require the DEA to delete reports that contain innocent content and prevent the DEA from targeting individual purchasers based on a report, which they won't. Commission a study, to create a sunset date to see if this reporting scheme even serves its stated purpose. They might do that, but they don't want to do that. At minimum, require the government to get a warrant for the lengthy preservation of content associated with a report. I think that's fair. I don't think that they're going to do that either. And they also think that it should be made easier for companies to notify their users about preservation requests similar to the NDO Fairness Act, which they absolutely should. I mean, that's basic stuff to me. And we've reached the end of our article here. So thank you to the Electronic Frontier Foundation for going through this law, or for this proposed bill, for telling us what the hell this is about and why they're doing it and why it's wrong, and that it's a complete invasion of privacy, and yet another way that they're trying to chop at any thought. I mean, this is thought police. Literally, they're now getting into your DMs.